Let me tell you something about Earth, that stubborn little planet, swirling in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. To call it untouchable would be generous. It's more like the cosmic version of a bar fight you didn't sign up for. And yet, here I am, trying to make sense of it. The Galactic Federation, the pinnacle of interstellar diplomacy, peace, and progressive bureaucracy, never imagined its most baffling adversary would be a species barely capable of planetary cooperation. Earth's humans, they call themselves. Simple name, complicated creatures. And now, thanks to an administrative hiccup and some truly questionable planetary zoning, I've been sent to assess them. As I hover in orbit, my ship's scanners twitch nervously at every stray signal. Static-laden broadcasts of synchronized shouting, they call it sports, and the occasional human-made meme. A peculiar blend of confusion and existential dread, all hint at one glaring truth. These people are either brilliant or bonkers. The Federation Handbook of Sentient Species strictly advises caution and open-mindedness. But honestly, who has the time? If humans are as dangerous as their planetary reputation suggests, I might need more than a clipboard and a sarcastic attitude. Earth looms below, a chaotic swirl of blue and green, an oasis of life in a hostile universe. Why does this fragile world inspire both awe and unease in equal measure? More importantly, why do we keep coming back when every instinct screams we shouldn't? We, the species I belong to, are a curious blend of hyper-intelligence and zero tolerance for incompetence. Precision, logic, and the graceful art of negotiation are our guiding principles. Homeworlds like ours are gleaming metropolises, well-oiled machines where life unfolds in a predictable, orderly manner. Time is a commodity, and we don't waste it on nonsense. In contrast, humans, their perception of time is hardly worth comparing. Clocks tick in erratic rhythms. Days are a patchwork of chaos, coffee-fueled procrastination, and what they call creativity. Their world is driven by unpredictability, emotion, and a somewhat alarming penchant for self-destruction. At first glance, there seems to be little hope for coexistence. How does a species so fundamentally driven by order, by the cold calculus of efficiency, make sense of a planet where large swaths of the population still hold on to things like superstition and luck? The differences are almost laughable. Yet, here's the rub. Despite all the noise and disorder, humans possess a tenacity, a strange brilliance, and an adaptability that makes them dangerously intriguing. It's those moments of unexpected clarity that keep pulling attention, clashes of chaos that reveal something deeper. Humans, where do I even begin? They're a species that can simultaneously build cities that reach the sky and create devices to, well, mess up their own brains in new and exciting ways. If their history were a series of footnotes, they'd read like a sitcom script. And then they accidentally almost blew up their entire planet again. But hey, they figured out how to make coffee without setting things on fire. Until, what's most perplexing though is how they still get things done despite themselves. With all their contradictions, wars and peace, knowledge and ignorance, empathy and utter confusion, they somehow stumble forward, one foot in front of the other. Like a species determined to prove chaos can still be productive. I've seen them endure things no rational mind would dare, only to come out the other side with a newfound sense of purpose. Or at least, a better coffee machine. There's an intriguing resilience to them, a sense that no matter how often they trip over their own feet, they're always looking for a way to stand back up. Their history is full of blunders, to be sure, but each blunder seems to come with a strange kind of genius tucked away in its aftermath. And yet, they persist. Why? Maybe there's something to that persistence after all. It started innocently enough. A diplomatic delegation sent to meet a delegation of humans. All protocols followed, all necessary procedures ticked off like a checklist. Or so I thought. What could possibly go wrong? When humans talk about negotiation, they're usually referring to some strange mix of diplomacy and bartering. They don't seem to grasp the fine art of consensus. Oh no, they take it as an opportunity for emotional expression. Imagine sitting at a table, expecting a smooth exchange of resources, and instead being confronted with impassioned speeches, hand gestures, and arguments that oscillate between fevered passion and confusion. The entire meeting devolved into a passionate debate about the ethics of pineapple on pizza. Honestly, I'm still unclear on how it was relevant to the topic at hand, but it's human nature to derail things with emotion. At first, I assumed this was just a cultural quirk, miscommunication perhaps. But as the days wore on, it became clear. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. They genuinely believe in the importance of their emotions in all decision-making. How could that possibly work in a society governed by logic and calculation? And then came the real shock. I'd assumed that their inability to maintain decorum during negotiations was a flaw, a fatal one in fact. But when a crisis emerged, one that threatened to undermine the very framework of the meeting, they responded with something I didn't expect. Innovation, born of desperation. One human, in the middle of the uproar, proposed a solution, a wild idea. Something so off the wall, I initially thought it might be a joke. Yet, the more I listened, the more I saw the threads of brilliance in it. They weren't just reacting emotionally. They were responding to the crisis with something that seemed almost intuitive. Try refocus. The word responded, the crisis with something that seemed almost intuitive. It was a turning point. I had always believed that emotion, in any form, would be the undoing of their species. Instead, their emotional intensity seemed to fuel creativity, pushing them to think beyond the rigid structures I relied on. The tension between our species, the logic-driven pragmatists and the passionate idealists, had never been clearer. But for the first time, I started to wonder, who would truly come out on top? The crisis was diffused not by logic, but by human ingenuity. Something unspoken, a kind of collective impulse that defied all reason. In the end, the resolution wasn't delivered by a flawless plan, but by an outburst of chaotic brilliance. The humans had salvaged what we thought was a lost cause, not by following the rules, but by breaking them. And then, somehow, the conversation was diffused, not by following the rules, but by breaking them. And that's when it hit me. The Federation's textbooks could never account for the true strength of humanity, not because they lacked intellect or resolve, but because they thrived in the margins, in the unpredictable moments when chaos forced them to adapt. What had started as a study of a flawed species became an exploration of a force I couldn't dismiss, resilience born of contradiction. Perhaps after all, Earth was untouchable, not because it was weak, but because its strength lay in the places we couldn't see coming. As I return to the safety of my ship, the human planet shrinks into the distance. It's strange, isn't it, how the most improbable of species can surprise you. I came here expecting to catalog their flaws, to tick off the reasons why they'd never survive the scrutiny of the Federation. Instead, I've witnessed something unexpected. Humans don't fit into neat boxes. They break the rules, discard the manual, and still somehow manage to stumble into brilliance. Maybe that's what makes them untouchable. Not their fragility, but their ability to turn even their messiest moments into something new. I think the Federation might just be missing the point. Perhaps the real question isn't whether humans will ever be worthy of inclusion, but whether the rest of the galaxy is ready for what they might bring. The partisans plodded forward on the next screen, observing the location during a critical rocket breakout before the first explosion.